A very warm welcome to Roots in the City and Intergenerational Allotment Exchange. Absolutely thrilled to have you join us today. We welcome you on behalf of Heal Earth, whether you're joining us from a bustling city flat, a suburban garden, or an office desk. Take a deep breath, you're in the right place. Before we dive into the soil, let's do a quick digital tech check to make sure that we're all connected. Firstly, if you can hear me clearly, just give a thumbs up by using your reaction button. Brilliant. Secondly, just locate your messaging chat box. And that's going to be our main community hub today. To get us started, I'd love for you to drop a single emoji into the chat that describes your energy level right now. Are you a lightning bolt, a sleeping coffee cup, a sprouting seedling, any other emoji? How are you feeling today? Fantastic. Brilliant. Today's roadmap is split into 4 core areas: heritage, the mind, intergenerational exchange, and our living library. At Heal Earth, our mission is to help you transition from eco-anxiety, which is incredibly valid and a heavy feeling, into eco-action. And we do that by reconnecting with the literal earth beneath our feet. Just going to tell you a little bit about Heal Earth as well. We are the world's first neuro-inclusive AI-powered ecosystem for environment and climate and sustainability education. And our mission is to bridge generational divides in this webinar and boost mental well-being through localized environmental agency. Our goal for today is again that transition from eco-anxiety to eco-action through tactile connection with the soil. And you can find out more about us at www.healearth.co. So let's launch into our first sort of official interactive activity. I want to know who is in the virtual room with us and what's your sort of history when it comes to gardening or allotments. Have you ever grown food? Type A in the chat, yes, I have an allotment or a garden. Type B, I've tried a few windowsill pots. C, I've never tried it, but I'm curious. And D, my grandparents used to grow everything. You can have more than one option. Fantastic, brilliant. So now we'll be focusing on the first part of our learnings, the allotment heritage and what that means in context of England. So to understand where we are going, we need to kind of look at where we started from. The UK allotment system wasn't born out of a hobby. It was born out of survival. So during the Industrial Revolution, these plots were lifelines for the urban poor. And then if you're fast forwarding to the Dig for Victory era in World War II, and we saw about 1.4 million active plots feeding the nation. Today, we have about 330,000 active plots, and the wait lists are years long. We have an inherent historical craving to touch the soil. So those statistics that we're sort of looking at, about 1.4 million plots active in 1943, those are continuing to grow. It taught a generation about seasonality, and it really, really solidified that allotment community and collective community spirit. And again, despite being over 150 years up and plus years old, the demand is higher than ever. And then we've got wait lists in some areas extending for years and years and years. So let's tap into that craving. I want you to close your eyes for just a second and think about a garden, a park, or an allotment that you visited as a child. It's just going to give you a few moments to think about that. And I want you to think about what is the first smell you associated with that memory or with that space. Could you type it in the chat, please? Fantastic. We've got fresh air and flowers. Lovely. Now we need to, and fresh cleanliness. Fantastic. Brilliant. We need to have a candid conversation about eco-anxiety. It is a chronic and it's a logical fear of environmental doom. And it unfortunately heavily impacts our youth as well. So the dominant feeling is the problem is too big for me to fix. And it surrounds us because it concerns the environment. So if we think about our agency ladder and we think about reflection, where do you feel you are today? So type 1, if you feel like you're watching and worried. For instance, I read the news and feel worried, but I don't know where to start. 2, learning and looking for small ways. So for instance, I'm looking for local projects, small ways to change my habits. 3, for acting, actively growing. I'm actively growing or volunteering in my community. Fantastic. We've got some 2s there. Learning, brilliant. Fantastic. And you've got a mixture of 3s and 2s as well. So brilliant. Thank you for that. Now, gardening is a profound neuro-inclusive tool. It offers tactile learning, predictable seasonal routines, and the chance for quiet, low-pressure focus. So to plant a garden, as it's famously said, is to believe in tomorrow. It is an act of defiance and hope. So the tactile learning comes in from the hands-on soil work that really grounds the nervous system. The predictabilities when you're focusing on the seasonal cycle, providing a structured and safe environment. And then you've got the quiet focus where gardening allows for parallel play and low pressure social interaction. So when we're thinking about the science of soil, it isn't just poetry, it's actually a hard science. So when you physically touch healthy soil, you come into contact with the bacterium called Mycobacterium vaccae. Science shows us that this actually triggers the release of a serotonin in your brain. It is a natural antidepressant. Furthermore, when you grow plants, you are actively participating in carbon drawdown. You are pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and pumping it into the soil through the roots. And we just go back to the science that we learned at school. You know, photosynthesis isn't just for leaves, it's actually pumping carbon back into the soil through the roots. So let's take 60 seconds to visualize that agency. You can either grab a piece of paper or use a digital whiteboard, or you could even just sketch in the air with your fingers, okay? Think about a dream patch. If you had a 2 meter by 2 meter square of earth, what is that one thing you would grow? Or you could visualize it as well, and then if you'd like to, you can type it in the chat. Lovely. So we've got some really interesting ideas coming through, more than one thing, but I'd like to combine flowers and vegetables. Brilliant. That works well. Thank you for sharing. Lovely. And we can also see trends and patterns over time when we're thinking about the community garden youth, and the percentage of young people 18 to 24 interested in local food growing over time is significantly increasing from 2015 till date. Now we're looking at intergenerational wisdom, so bridging the divide and heritage knowledge. We'll just take a moment to share some examples of the dream garden that's been talked about. So a compact 2x2 raised bed can provide a diverse and productive mini garden. Thank you. With a back row of 2 tomato plants supported by stakes, with 1 or 2 sunflowers in the corner. Middle section, rows of leafy greens, lettuce and spinach alongside root vegetables, carrots and bees, with the front edge of a strip of culinary herbs such as basil, parsley, chives, and thyme for easy access. Borders being marigolds or other pollinator-friendly flowers to attract beneficial insects and add color. So this simple layout combines vegetables, herbs, and flowers to maximize space, support biodiversity, and provide fresh produce throughout the growing season. This is lovely. Thank you so much for sharing this. And this sort of conversation, again, can all become intergenerational as well, where we're sharing a wisdom interlined with traditional growing spaces, acting as bridges between generations. So when we actually step into a community garden, the generation gap actually vanishes. Elders hold decades of hyper-local heritage and knowledge, whether that's relating to the weather, for instance, weather law, pest control, whether that's looking at seed saving, while younger generations bring brilliant new climate science and energy. However, if we have generations passing away without sharing that knowledge, a library of local wisdom is lost. So, we're going to be thinking about a role play scenario where we are learning to question about that wisdom, but also learning to listen. So, imagine you're interviewing a neighbor who has gardened for 50 years. Which question would you ask first? I mean, these are suggestions. What was the weather like here when you were a child? What is the one plant you could never live without? How has the soil changed over the decades? And do you have any other questions in mind? Fantastic. So some of the questions we're getting is, what's one thing you know that you wish you'd known when you first started gardening decades ago? What's changed the most between now and then? What a fantastic question. Thank you for sharing that. Again, all of this links back to the heritage knowledge, weather law, for instance, predicting frost patterns before there were apps, pest control, looking at companion plants like marigolds instead of chemicals, which is more environmentally friendly, as well as looking at seed saving, preserving heritage varieties for the future. Again, that interlinks to that intergenerational wisdom. So thank you for sharing this as well, asking questions. How has the climate changed? Which plant couldn't you live without? And how has the soil changed over time? Really incredibly important questions that both share the heritage knowledge and utilize that wisdom for regeneration. Now, we've reached the heart of our event, looking at the living library. So today, you are the books. We want to hear wisdom passed down in your families and communities. The floor is now open. You can use the raise a hand feature to come off mute and show us an item on camera, or you can type your best sustainable growing tip into the chat, or you can talk about your experiences, for instance. So the Living Library Exchange is an exchange where people are the books. We share lived experiences and sustainable growing tips passed down through time. So we'd like you to sort of share that. It's up to you. You can show yourself on camera and speak. You can put down information in the chat. We'll give you a few moments for that. You can either put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak out. Or you can share cultural examples as well in the past, or examples that you've decided, for instance. Fantastic. So we've got some really interesting ideas here. After burning firewood, my grandparents used the wood ash in the vegetable garden around potatoes as a traditional way to enrich the soil. Brilliant. Thank you very much for this. Fantastic. So we have another contribution as well. This one is based on a study that I heard about last year. Farmers planting sunflowers between their fields and along the edges, which led to reduced pesticide use by 16%, and their crop yield increased, as well as not having any generational advice, as all of the people in my family who grew something either refuse to talk about it, especially because they live in another country with a very different climate, so they don't feel the advice or experience is relevant to me in the UK, or they passed away before they could share any wisdom. Thank you very much for sharing this. Incredibly relevant, incredibly important. And we have another contribution. My grandparents used duo, if I'm saying that correctly, mixture, copper sulfate and lime to protect grape wines from downy mildew. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So as we're wrapping up our library, we're thinking about additional artifacts that we can carry. So sort of looking at seed saving as the ultimate act of intergenerational hope. It links the harvest of the past to the planting of the future as well. Although we have official seed banks, but sort of having heirloom seeds in the community really adds to that as well, and adds to, again, conserve that biodiversity, as well as, maximizing the utilization of the allotments and carrying forward the heritage as well. So localized agencies, incredibly, incredibly important. Thinking about, the climate narrative, for instance, in terms of the local community engagement and regeneration, could also start with looking at existing resources and mapping them. So where are the gray spaces that might be in potential decline, that could become those regenerative blue or green spaces, for instance? That works well with changing the climate narrative. So reframing the climate narrative from I can't stop climate change on my own to I can improve the biodiversity of my balcony today. Those small steps make a difference. So what I would like you to do is sort of think about reframing our climate narrative together right now, and type in the chat what your I can statement could be. Can statements, we sort of also thinking about entering the space. So a gate is just an entrance. The community gardening is the journey. It opens doors to mental health, food security, and belonging, as well as reducing eco-anxiety. And then we're looking at the calendar and the seasonal changes. For instance, looking at when we could be thinking about sowing seeds, maybe starting on a windowsill. In the summer, maybe thinking about the nurturing and the watering. Another way could be to mulch to save the water. And the autumn, harvest and storage, sharing the surplus. Again, winter, coming back to that planning and repair, and potentially could also start early sowing of the seeds as well, and resting that soil. Now, if we look into our I can statements as well, thank you so much for sharing these. So I can help reduce climate change by walking instead of using a car whenever possible. I can reduce my environmental impact by using energy and resources more responsibly. I can support climate action by taking more rational and mindful consumption choices. As a physics teacher, I can design classroom activities about renewable energy sources. I can align my teaching with curriculum outcomes while focusing on sustainability topics. I can help students understand climate change through physics, concepts like energy and efficiency, and I can encourage students to think critically about renewable energy and real-world solutions. I can connect classroom learning with everyday environmental challenges. These are really, really fantastic icon statements, and they really interlink with the ethos of Heal Earth as well, because we focus on the neuro-inclusive climate curricula as well as the sustainable storytelling to make those real-life interlinks as well. And why do we garden? Why do we actually have these allotment spaces? Overwhelmingly for mental health, growing fresh food, as well as that climate action as well, which really makes an impact. So I think this is going to be our last interactive activity, a seed swap logic challenge. I'd like you to put these steps in the correct order in the chat. So A is distribute to community. B is collect and dry seeds. C, label clearly date and type. And D, host a meetup. Which order do you think they should be in? Fantastic. So we've got a suggestion of D, host a meetup. B, collect and dry seeds. C, label clearly with date and type. And A, distribute to the community. Yep, that could work as well. Fantastic. Thank you for that. So here's your 7-day challenge. Like you to, on day 1, identify one local community garden or space or an allotment space for instance, and by day 3, speak to an elder or somebody from a different generation about their garden memories. And day 7, just plant one seed, even if it's a seed in a yogurt pot, for instance. And we're thinking about collectively being better together for the planet. What's your final reflection? What is the one thing you're taking away from today's exchange? You can unmute and speak, or you can share and type in the chat below. Give you a moment to think about your final reflection as well as if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. We've got some links over there for Heal Earth as well as our email address info@healearth.co and our WhatsApp and contact number as well if you'd like to find out more. So happy to take your reflections and questions as well. You can either unmute yourself or type in the chat. So fantastic. So I already have a strong awareness of the importance of planting trees, and I deeply love trees. A tree carries time within itself. It can live for hundreds of years, holding within it not just one generation, but many generations and their history. What a beautiful reflection. Absolutely. We'll just give a few more moments. If you'd like to ask any more questions or any reflections, we are here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Brilliant. We've got the details there if you'd like to continue the conversation. And thank you so much for joining for today. We'll be concluding now. Thank you.